Welcome, everybody. We're going to get started. So I want to welcome you all to the Disaster Preparedness webinar series. Today's topic is Financial Emergency Preparedness. We thank you for taking the time to join us this afternoon. My name is Emily Swihart, and I will be moderating today's session. Just a few housekeeping items to share before we begin. In an effort to allow the session to run smoothly, we have muted all participants and ask that you don't use your videos. Today's session will be recorded and sent out to all who have registered following the series. And if you would like to ask a question, please use the chat feature during today's presentation. You may also wait until the end of the presentation to ask questions. Today's presentation is delivered by Camaya Wallace Bechard. She is a consumer economics educator serving Livingston, McLean, and Woodford counties. She provides educational programming that focuses on building skills and knowledge about money management and financial decision making. Camaya, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Emily, and thank you everyone for being on. We are so thrilled for everyone who has come back for our series. This is the last of all 5 sessions for our disaster preparedness series, and I'm very happy to close out with you. So for today, there are a few things that we'll talk about. We'll cover financial emergency preparation and what you can do to get yourself started or continue on your journey to become well adapted to different emergency situations. Then I want to provide some examples of financial emergencies and describe ways in how we can work to recover from financial emergencies. So whether that is through a natural disaster or through something else. Then we're also going to discuss scams because, when it comes to financial topics, we absolutely have to cover scams. So just making sure that we get that basis covered. Then, of course, we're going to identify some existing resources for dealing with financial emergencies. So thank you again for being here today. And I believe Emily did mention that this session will be recorded. So when it comes to emergencies, it can happen at any time and it can happen to anyone. So taking the steps that we need to prepare for the unexpected can help with reducing the lasting effects that it may have on us in the long run. And so when it comes to that utility piece, what preparation we put in today can have a big effect on how things happen for us in the future. Now, I always love to start off with a definition or a description of what we're going to be discussing, just so that we're all starting from the same place. So what is a financial emergency, right? Throughout this series, we've talked a lot about emergencies and natural disasters, but when it comes to financial emergencies, what are we talking about? So according to FEMA, a financial emergency is any expense or loss of income that you do not plan for. So that could also mean a missed paycheck. It could be damaged roof, a medical bill, just something that comes out of a hard situation that requires you to maybe act fast or to do something about it right away. And it typically includes having some kind of payment that you have to make. So it usually involves in money when it comes to different emergencies. Now for today, I like to get a little bit of engagement. So I'm going to ask your participation. I have a few things that I would just love for you to work with me on. So I have some true or false question for you. And for those who signed up for the series, I'm sure you received the handout beforehand. So you received the PowerPoint, so you will do great in this. So for these ones, I have a few here. So you're going to tell me if this is true or false. So myth or fact. So the U.S. has sustained 570 weather and climate disaster, costing over $1 billion in damage since 1980. Do you think this is a myth or fact? The U.S. has sustained 570 weather and climate disasters, costing over $1 billion in damage since 1980. So tell me if you believe this is true or false, myth or fact. I see fact in here, fact. I see some factual things coming through. All right, I see one myth. Okay, let's see what the verdict says. So in truth, according to information, this information has been updated since July. So according to this information that we do have, we know that U.S. has sustained 332 weather and climate disasters since 1980. So the number is not too far away from it, but it's a little bit since this year, so half of this year. And when it comes to like the cost of like these natural disasters, it is a lot. And there's a lot of different natural disasters that have occurred. So just wanted to share that. I have another one for you. Good guessing, everyone. Thanks for participating. All right, so my other one for you. There were 9 weather and natural disaster events with an estimated cost of $1 billion in 2022. True or false? Myth or fact? What do you think? See true? See some true coming in here? That's a lot of money for the first half of the year, huh? Yes. All right, thanks again for participating. Well done, everyone. So yes, in fact, there have been 9 weather and natural disaster events this year as of July 2022. So with these kinds of information that we get, and I know we covered some information on, the natural disaster piece and all that in the first sessions that we covered throughout the series, but wanted just to gauge your engagement a little bit. So thank you for participating. Now, to move on to just, there we go. To move on to just different pieces on here, I have another question for you. What kinds of financial emergencies have you experienced in your lives? So what are some of the challenges that you've seen? I think I mentioned some examples within my definition in terms of, having like flat tires, maybe issues with a car, maybe a roof. What are some of the financial emergencies that you have experienced in your life? Broken water heater, medical, roof, furnace, job loss. Yes. A lot of these can have significant financial impact on your life. Oh my goodness. So car problem, lost both alternator and battery. Oh my gosh. So sorry, Dawn. House fire. So sorry to hear that. Basement flood, medical bills. Thank you for sharing that. So when it comes to different financial emergencies, there are a wide range. There are different types that we might experience. And I wanted to quickly highlight that, when we look at different US households and we look to see who's more likely and how likely are we to experience a financial emergency, information and research that comes from FEMA highlights that 6 out of 10 households in America experience at least one financial emergency a year. That's more than half of the population facing like these different types of emergency. So whether or not people are experiencing natural disaster, and if they had, any major effect from those natural disasters, there's also other types of emergencies that they face, based on even some of the examples that you've listed on here. And other facts relating to, as we think about like emergencies and how we plan for emergencies, we know that about 1/3 of American families do not have any savings. And of course, this is based on different family situations, different household situations, why they're unable to save, or, maybe have to take money out of savings. So they end up not having like a lot of money in savings. But this is significant as we think about, planning for financial emergencies. So just knowing that a good chunk of the population really does not have anything in savings. The other piece that I want to add, each year the Federal Reserve publish information on the financial well-being of US households. And we know from the information that they've published that only 64% of people could cover like a surprise expense. And that could be an emergency where it is something negative and you have to respond to it right away, but it could also be something positive or something exciting that somebody's looking for as well that just pops up and you have to take care of that expense. But just knowing that only 64% will be able to cover like a $40 surprise expense is also important to know as we think about like what are financial emergencies and how are we equipped to handle what these emergencies are when they pop up, being able to manage them and move on with our lives in our situation. Now, I ask you to list some of your experiences with like financial emergencies. Now I'm going to go into a little bit of details with asking about what are some of the types of financial emergencies that we do face, and how do we categorize them, and what are some of the impact of these emergencies. So one of the first ones I want to mention is health. And I saw people put information in there on, medical bill. This is a big one. And it's not just your health, right? So it could be other household members who are dependent on you, or it could be even your pets. As some people would say, like their pets are their family, and their pets mean, so much to them. And so that, of course, becomes an important part of their plan as they're working towards, setting up things in place in case an emergency situation happens. So the cost of medical care or pet care, it can affect your overall goals and plans. Information from the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services indicated that healthcare spending grew by almost 10% in 2020. And of course, I'm sure some of you could wonder why that might be. We were going through a pandemic and all the changes relating to that. The next type of financial emergency has to do with like household emergencies. And these are tons of things that can just get thrown at us. Sometimes it's multiple things, right? So as Dawn mentioned, it's not just a problem with the car, but it's like two problems that's happening at the same time, which of course is going to increase like the cost of what you have to cover that particular expense. So when it comes to household expense, sometimes it's one thing that happens at a time. Sometimes it's like multiple things that you have to work on. And repairs are a big one, of course. And like I just mentioned, at least, 6 out of 10 US households experience an emergency within a given year. So whether it is, repairing like a damaged roof or a furnace, all of these can add up. And unplanned transitions too, that becomes a big one with just different life situations that we might be in. Having to make adjustments to make it work for you or make it work for your loved ones. Those are also important in these household decisions. Things like unanticipated travel. So, if somebody in the family passed away, or you have to go somewhere to take care of a family member because of a tough situation, whatever it is, all of these, unexpected, unanticipated things, they can absolutely affect your overall financial plan and what you're doing towards like your saving. And then, of course, disaster, right? So in line with like our series title, natural disasters can have like those big impact on our lives. And we'll talk more as we go along. So what are the impacts of like financial emergencies? What effect do they have on our lives? So a financial emergency, it can disrupt your savings. It can disrupt like your financial progress, your goals that you're working towards. So whether it is paying down your mortgage, paying off student loans, whatever those goals are, when an emergency situation happens, you have to decide how you're going to cover the cost of that emergency, where that money is going to come from. And if you have to borrow that money, how you're going to repay that money. So there might be some immediate and unfortunately, sometimes some long-term like setbacks for dealing with like these financial emergencies. So if you had a plan to like get things paid down like these debt with like credit cards and other things, and you're working towards those might have to pause to deal with like the immediate challenges that you're facing from that specific financial emergency. There's other things as well too that can occur from that, but just knowing that when it does happen, you as a person in this situation, it feels really hard, but there are lots of things, of course, in your life that you do not have control over. And some of these emergencies are those types of things. So knowing that if you have to make adjustments to what you have been doing in your life financially, just knowing that it might be temporary and you will be able to recover after a while. But again, you have to make those adjustments to address like those immediate concerns. If you have like a flooded basement, things like that you have to get taken care of right away. Now, as I'm talking, please feel free to add your comments and questions to the chat. I know I might not be able to answer your questions right now, but I would absolutely love to address those after we are wrapping up. So yes, please feel free to add your comments and questions to the chat. Now, getting started, right? So here I am telling you what financial emergencies are, some of the challenges that might come out of a financial emergency. But for all of us, we can acknowledge that, right? We can acknowledge that financial emergencies do happen. but how do you get started? What's this good starting point for somebody who, you come on this webinar today and you're looking for just ideas and ways in how you can get started on, protecting yourself and protecting like your loved ones and properties, things that you have in your life. So how do you get started? You can get started, of course, in different ways, but one that we found to be very helpful, and this is from research, is as you're getting started, it's figuring out what is going on in your life and trying your best to get organized. And what does get organized mean? It just means that you know your current money situation. And for a lot of people, it might be a little bit hard to track all their expenses. So whether it's mortgage, rent, your food, your utilities, other things that you have coming in each month. But when it comes to getting organized, we want to assess what our financial situation is, just to know what your income is, know what your monthly expenses are, or even like your weekly expenses. That can help you have a good idea of what you may be able to cover. And we'll go into a little bit more details with that. The other piece is, as you're looking at getting organized, what are some things in your home that you can slowly start to work on? So say, for example, you bought your home and, it's been a few years and you realize that there's some stuff deteriorating with your roof. Maybe you don't need to get like your whole roof replaced, but are there opportunities for you to make improvements or repairs based on recommendations from trusted professionals who know how to work on roofs? So just making sure that you are doing things ahead of time. If you have personal things, so whether it's like sentimental things or valuable things in terms of monetary value, making sure that you are know where those things are and you decide how you would like to protect all of those. The other piece is to assess like your dependency. So who depends on you? Do you have aging household members? Do you have pets? Do you have children? Do you have family members with disability? What are some of the considerations that you need to make and include that in your plan? What are some specific services, medication, food that you might need for those who do depend on you? So getting started means that you can try to assess like these different things, getting organized, assess like your dependency piece. And I have like a really cool tool that I will share with you towards the end in how it can help you get started and get organized. Then of course, the other piece is, looking to see, ways that you can identify what are some of the risks that might occur and what are some tools that I could use to protect myself against like some of the financial risks. And this, of course, looking at like your health, your property, making sure that you do have insurance coverage. And if your insurance coverage, support like some of the emergency situations that you might be in. So making sure that you are paying attention to that and know what your coverage is. So I want to deep dive a little bit more into understanding your current situation as you're getting started. So I mentioned before, like knowing what you have coming in. So our income, that could be from employment, from other benefits that you have. What is that amount that you do have coming in each month? And where is it going? So what are some of the things that you are paying for each month, whether it's like your phone bill, you are paying for like insurance that comes out of like your monthly pay or the monthly income that you do have coming in? We just want to know that you have an idea of how you're tracking that. And if you have used different tracking system in the past, so whether it is a spreadsheet or a budgeting app, whatever you've used in the past and what you continue to use, if it's working for you, wonderful. But sometimes you need to try a few different things. And if it's not working for you, where can you make that adjustment so that it works well for you? But tracking that becomes important. And lots of times it might seem overwhelming for people to track every single expense that they have each month, but start with some of the bigger items and seeing where those are. And as you work on those bigger items, then of course you can start to track some of the smaller things as well too, because small amounts do add up. The other piece is like assess what your net worth is. So your net worth, of course, is the assets, so all the things that you have, you own versus like the amount of debt that you have. Seeing where you're at financially. And this might take a little bit of time. So give yourself time to evaluate your situation, money you have in investments, the savings that you have, the property that you own, all those things that you have that you would want to see where you're at financially can absolutely help you. And also too, with understanding your current situation, knowing that, do I have like a buffer in case something happens and I'm able to afford like a payment if a natural disaster situation happens or a different type of emergency happens? Do I have money put aside to take care of that issue? So think about like what you have right now and what you'll be able to do. Understanding your current situation also means that you pay attention to what's going on with like your credit history. So your credit report is that documentation that have information on your different credit accounts, your payment history, all of those. So with keeping track of what's going on with your credit report, that is also another way to get organized and to get started. And we recommend that for you, when you go get your credit report, that you do use annualcreditreport.com, which is federally regulated, and you are guaranteed, one copy of your credit reports from all three bureaus once a year. That has changed a little bit with the pandemic, where you were able to get it once every week. And I believe that expiration date might be coming up soon, but just knowing that you have access to your free credit report and you can get that information just to see what's going on in your credit history. It's not just for you, it's not just to see, all of your credit history, but it's also to pay attention to see if there's anything on there that doesn't look right. So if something's on there that does not belong to you, and you'll be able to address whatever concerns that you have on there. So understanding your situation includes a lot of these, but you can take your time in what you're doing to assess. Start small with looking at what your monthly income is, and then working your way through, assessing your network, and also looking at like your credit reports to see what's going on with your credit information. I want to zoom in on the specific examples, because you find that, when we use examples of a type of financial emergency, it might stay a little bit more with people. So here's to hoping that this resonates a little bit more with you by using a solid example. So, when you are assessing your needs, using flood recovery as an example, how do you prep for potential flooding, and so when we look at this, I'm looking at like these different steps that you can take to prep. The first piece, of course, is getting your home ready. And as I mentioned before, there are lots of different times when, you can start on small projects. So there might be projects at home that you can do on your own, but there may be other things that you need a licensed professional to come and do for you. So assess your home and see what is going on there and what you can do to get it ready. Another piece also too is looking to see like what level of emergency it might be when you see like a flood watch or a flood warning that comes in, where you might need to know, is this time to make sure that I batten things down, or do I just watch to see what is going on and if I need to do anything else in the future? So understanding like that level of emergency. The third piece here is creating like that emergency supply kit. And we covered this in one of our sessions before. So here's more incentive if you haven't been on the last 4 sessions to go back and see some of the wonderful information that my colleagues shared. The other piece also was covered in one of the sessions is preparing like your food and water supply. So there's information on how to do that, how to manage your food, how to store things properly and safely as you're managing like a financial situation, especially when it comes to like natural disasters. All right, so I'm looking, I don't see any questions in the chat or any comments, but again, feel free to add those. So when it comes to financial emergencies, what are some things you can do now, right? So I'm gonna walk you through a few things you can do now, things you can do during that financial emergency, and then things that you can do afterwards. So when it comes to now, one of the first and biggest one that we always try to encourage people to do is have an emergency savings fund. And an emergency savings fund is like a specific amount that you dedicate to help you preparing for unexpected events that might happen in your lives. And there's lots of different debates on how much should be in that emergency savings fund, but it also depends on your situation. For some people, you can start small and continue to build it over time, but work through this with, if you have like a partner or if it's just you and your household, just making sure that you create a plan on how you're going to save for the unexpected. The other piece is, keep good records. And if you do have cash, making sure that you are storing that money safely. Some of my research, I've focused on why people might not participate in like financial institutions like bank and also credit unions, but always making sure that you are keeping good record. And again, if you have cash, that there are ways that you can save that securely if you're not putting that into a financial institution. Other things that you can do now, come up with a communications plan. Like I said, I have a great tool to share with you. Communications plan, involve those who are in your life, even if they don't live in the same household. Say, for example, you have maybe like a parent or somebody else who is a part of your family who doesn't live in that same household. Want to share with them like those appropriate information on numbers to call, where to meet, other things like that as you create your communication plan. Also review like your health insurance coverage. So when you started out and you got your policy, it might be one way, but it has things change in your life. Have you moved to a different area? What are some of the things that you might need to consider to upgrade in like your health insurance coverage? And we do have several podcast and also webinar series from our Get Savvy webinar that focus a lot on insurance. So I will make sure that those links get attached to our follow-up or at the end of this session. Other things that you can do now is, again, protect your property. I talked a lot about that, so I'm not going to go too much into that. Other things is making sure that if you need to work with like a financial professional, somebody who's trustworthy, somebody who's licensed to work with you based on your financial situation, to develop a plan in how you're going to manage your money, how you're going to handle your money, and how you might be able to plan for an emergency situation. That could also be an option for you to work with a financial professional. We will, like I said, I will share some information on like the insurance piece, but I wanted to quickly add that when it comes to like your insurance need, making sure that you're looking to see what type of insurance you have and if this insurance matters for where you are in your life. So life insurance is a big one for a lot of people that they do either participate in or they think about participating in, but just knowing that life insurance is an option for you. Health insurance, again, is important for you and your family members. Also with like our vehicles, so property insurance, that becomes important again. And then when we look at like natural disasters and other disasters insurance, what do you have? What's your coverage? Just read in just the agreement that you have between you and your insurance company to see how you might benefit in the case of an emergency. So like I mentioned, so we work with different partners on our Get Savvy webinar series, and we do have more webinars. So if you are interested in learning more about like insurance and insurance coverage, we have those for you, and I'll make sure that we share those links. So during a natural disaster or an emergency situation, what do you do? So you know that money that you were saving just in case something happens? Yeah, this is when you would use that. So this is one of the beauty of having some money put away for an emergency situation, is that when you're in that situation, you might be able to, take money out of that and use it towards what you need to cover right now. And again, that's where that emergency savings become important. Think about like, what are some of your community resources that you have that you can reach out to, whether for assistance or contacts with different organizations that might help you get to the right place for services that you might need, any help that you might need in your financial recovery piece. And also during this time, say for example, with like a job loss or a disaster situation where you're unable to work or you're unable to pay a fee or a bill, making sure that you are contacting your credit company. So whether it's a credit card companies or other lenders that you do have like those contractual agreement with, making sure you're reaching out to them and letting them know what's going on in your area. Please do not assume that they know that your area just experienced a tornado, right? We would hope that everybody's paying attention to the news and seeing what's going on, but don't just assume that they will know. Making sure that you are contacting them, you are reaching out to them to share that information and tell them how it has affected you and your situation, and working with them on a plan and how you might repay that loan or how you might pay off that credit card. After a disaster, after a financial emergency, making sure that you are, again, finding the resources that you need, whether through our federal services that we have or through other community-based services. Thinking about how you might want to prioritize like your spending during this time is also important. What are some immediate things that you have to take care of right away? What are some of the basic needs that you have, the basic needs that your dependents have? How do you plan and how do you prioritize what you're going to be doing with them? The other piece, of course, is looking to see if there are tax breaks that you could benefit from. So if you go on irs.gov, they have information on how you can find out more about getting tax break based on like a financial emergency situation or a natural disaster situation. So based on what you're in, thinking about, what are some of the benefits that I might be able to get out of this as well too. The other thing I want to highlight on here with after disasters, to beware of scams. And I have a few slides on this because this is important, where a lot of fraudulent activities pop up, after a natural disaster or other emergency situations that we're dealing with. So just to summarize, when we think of using like that flood example, there are things we can do now. There's things that we can do during that experience. And then there are also things that we can do afterwards. So just when we think about like just the different steps that we can take to addressing like an emergency situation, and using again like this flood as a flood example, it's knowing that there's things that you can do at different phases in that. All right. So that was a lot of information that I did cover, and using like that specific example. So I hope that was able to give you a little bit of concrete picture just using that example. But now we're going to move into, there are lots of things that we have that we value and things that we need in our lives. And with all this important information, how do we keep it safe? How do we protect our personal and financial information? Because when we have a plan and when we do have a strategy for protecting that information, it can help us, save a lot of worries and heartache that may come when we're in an emergency situation, when we have things already organized. Now, there are different ways that you can do that based on your level of comfort. So with our financial documents or healthcare documents, other identifying documents that we need. So important things like our social security card or birth certificate or passports, all these information that we might have. They're important things that we do have that really does matter how we take care of those. So for some people, they might prefer physical to digital storage, but having like a combination of both can be very beneficial for you. So for the physical storage, a lot of people might have like those fireproof, waterproof ones where they feel comfortable with like securing their important documents in there. And then for some people, using like digital storage options from reputable cloud storage solutions and other things that can help you with securing that information. So with like the digital option, making sure that you use maybe like a password manager, or you have some kind of system set up for making sure that that information is secure. So whether you choose digital or whether you choose physical or a combination of both, having like backups of your important documents securely stored is just going to be a little bit more beneficial for you. as you're working your way through a disaster situation or through an emergency situation. So you can find those quickly, you know where they are, and you can quickly grab those. Now, like I said, I was going to talk a little bit about scams. So lots of things that might pop up during like a financial emergency. And charitable scams is another one, or disaster fraud. So there are many fraudulent activities might pop up or even reemerge during times of crisis. And so when we look to see what do we need to know, for some of you, like it's easy to spot if something is just out of place, but lots of times when we are in like an emergency situation and there's like tons of other things that are on our mind and things that we're doing, we may not be in that headspace to just focus a lot on what if somebody else is deciding that they want to do some fraudulent activities. So just being aware of the fact that these do exist. So unfortunate, but they do exist. So beware of like the disaster relief related scams, and just knowing that for federal workers looking to help regular consumers like ourselves, they do not solicit or accept money. Do your best and try not to provide like social security, bank information, or other personal information just to people, making sure that you are doing your due diligence. So if somebody comes up to you and say they're a federal worker and they're here because of, the disaster relief fund, and they need to get all your information from you to make sure that you're on the list to receive the services that you need, ask people to show you like a government issued ID, which is often a laminated photo ID. Look to see how people are dressed too in that representation, because believe it or not, for a lot of workers, when they do go out into the field, they are represented in a certain way. So paying attention to that, making sure that, again, you're not giving out like those very sensitive information that you have. Also too was like the door-to-door piece, not to say there might not be legitimate folks who are coming to see how people are doing in a neighborhood that's just experienced like a major flood, but beware of that. Be conscious of the fact that even though you do need help right now, you are going to try to find out more information before you provide any information to other people. That is, of course, if you are on the receiving end. But what if you are in a place or you're in a position to help others? So a natural disaster just happened. It's not in your area and you do have some money saved up and you really want to help other people because you have received help in the past, or you are just in a wonderful place where you are able to help somebody else. Some really good information that you can find from irs.gov is just more information on how you can vet to see if it's like a legitimate charity, and where you're donating to, that money is going to the right place and to the right people. So making sure that you are finding out more information about the cause and the agencies. You're looking at like their ratings, their reviews, and any complaints that they may have. And you're also, using like caution as you're donating. So making sure that, your credit card or checks, that piece is of course safer than just giving cash or people asking you to do a wire transfer or send it through like a gift card. So always question things like that. Not to say that there might not be situations where you might be working with like an agency, but always question when they ask you for a certain way in how you need to pay. I feel like I just rhymed there, but yeah, make sure that you're asking. So beware of like different tricks as well too, where, try your best not to rush. That there are lots of, small children or families or folks with disability that really does need some help right now, but try your best to take time and not to rush. And looking online, because again, I said like from the IRS, they do have information where you can search to see if this charity or this nonprofit charity exists. So you can put in that information to find out more about where you're donating your money. So with all your wonderfulness of wanting to help other people, just making sure that if you're supporting a cause that you care about, that you are looking on all the information and you make sure that they are a legitimate place that you are donating to. Now I'm going to take a break for a second. I have a question for you. What are some non-financial steps you can take to prepare for emergencies? Now, I know some of you have been on the other sessions, so you're going to have some ideas. I'm going to see them in the chat, but share with us, share with us today as a group. What are some non-financial steps you can take to prepare for emergencies? Share your ideas in the chat with me. Create a will. Yes. So for a lot of people with like that estate planning piece, that becomes important to have things in writing and have those things authorized so you know what's going on there. I see gathering important documents. Yes. So what doesn't cost right now? There might be a cost with some things, but it's not fully like, focusing on the money right now with other things that you can do. So thanks for sharing those. Contact information for family and for work. Yes, having all of that organized, those contact lists become important as well too. Listen things, important phone numbers in your car and at work, right? A lot of us have smartphones now. Tell me, how many numbers do you memorize? How many numbers do you know from memory? I probably know like 4. That I can quickly call. So yes, having a list of those numbers, that becomes important. Keep important information together. Yes, easy to get, like whatever your strategy is for storing information, whether again in like digital format, in a physical format, or a combination of both. Just like Barb said, making sure that that information is easy to collect. Thank you very much. These are some great ideas. Some other things that I want to add for like some non-emergency planning piece. And some of this, of course, might include money as you're working towards getting it all together, but having extra food over time. So just doing that over time. Bottled water, we have a lot of information again in the other sessions on these. Sometimes having like a go bag, that becomes important. In your vehicle, do you have like a winter car kit? What things do you have in there to help you in case like an emergency situation happened and you're broken down on the highway or even on a country road somewhere during the winter when it's very cold? Also for your home, in a situation where something might have happened in your home and you're nowhere near there, but you have a trusted family member, friend, or neighbor who do have access to your home. And of course, you be careful with this and you use your wonderful judgment to make sure that you are trusting the right person to have like that access to your home. So yeah, these are some of the non-emergency planning. I love all that you all listed. So I think I'm going to steal some of those ideas because I like those to include in this piece as well. All right, so we are working our way through this. So, some of the key strategies for financial recovery. So we've talked a lot about, what can you do during, what are some of the preparation things that you need to do? How can you do that? What are some of the benefits to you? Then we're going to move a little bit into, as we're thinking about what does financial recovery look like after a financial emergency, after, a natural disaster or something doing with like a household emergency. Well, there are a number of things that you can do, and some of this has already been shared. I see some things in the chat here as well too, is key strategy with like our important documentation, just making sure that we have these information securely documented. So whether you want to look at a spreadsheet, whatever communication strategies you want to use, keep track of different information that you've had. So say, for example, you are working out an arrangement with a lender after an emergency situation, making sure that you keep track of those important documents as well. So details for those documents, conversations, emails, dates, people who are involved, all of those become important. Obtaining like those accurate information. Yeah, that is great. Just having like that official information, about whatever assistance you might get, where cleanup is going to happen, where to go, all that information can help you as you're working towards like your financial recovery. Then this middle piece, and it's central for a very important reason, taking care of yourself, right? Sometimes when things happen, we are moving so fast. We are doing so many different things and taking care of other people. But it's also important to remember that you have to take care of you as well, not just your basic needs, but knowing that in a financial emergency, it can be very hard emotionally on you. It can be very taxing on your health. So making sure that you are taking a breath and taking care of yourself as well is important to your recovery process and to all the different pieces that will matter to your household. The other piece, again, looking at those dependents that you might have, helping them cope through the situation. So when you take care of yourself, then you might be in a better place to help, others cope with what has happened to you, because sometimes it's a big loss. So I can give you an example. Last year, like one of our vehicles that we've had for a very long time that my middle daughter, she's so used to that vehicle because we had it since she was very little. And it just stopped working, and we tried to get it fixed, but we couldn't get it fixed. And when we went to get a new car and to get rid of that other one, she was very upset. She was very upset about losing this vehicle that she's known almost her entire life. So helping others cope. I mean, in this situation, it's a car, but in other situation, it's like losing a huge part of your home or losing your home, other things that you have to help others in your life to cope with. And then seeking help and accepting whatever financial aid that you might be able to get, whether again, it's from like state or federal government, that can help towards your financial recovery. So what are some things to do post-disaster? So if we're looking at like emergency situations where it's like a natural disaster, just knowing that if you do lose your home or you've had like major damage to your home, that you are still responsible for your mortgage. Whatever condition like your home is in. So this again is when you would reach out to your lender. Do not assume that they know, making sure that they understand what you are going through right now, and setting up a plan to work with them. The other thing as well, looking to see for like other bills that you have, might like your credit card bills, making sure that you are staying on top of those. Because if you decide that, you're in a tough situation and just not going to pay any attention to it, and you don't make your payments, that can, of course, affect your credit history negatively. And we really do not want that. Other post-disaster thing to think about as you're looking down the list is if, for example, you do lose your job and you're unable to pay your bills, again, contacting your lenders just to make sure that they have that information about you. Here's a resource that I was so excited to share with you. So FEMA has an emergency financial first aid kit that I really, really do love. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about this kit. And then again, I will provide this information for you. It has like several parts to it. But like the main thing that it covers is, how to assess and compile information. So it provides like these 4 simple steps for financial preparedness. So the assess and compile piece, just focus on gathering all your important documents and your contacts. So what you all mentioned in the chat. And then it focuses on reviewing like your insurance policies and your financial paperwork. So making sure that things are up to date and current and accurate. The other thing that it talks about is making sure that you're safeguarding whatever paperwork you have. So whether that is through physical storage or through electronic storage, making sure that those things are in safe locations. And then the last piece is to update. So you're going to revisit and update your plan regularly. And this is especially important with like all the changes that happen in our lives, right? So lots of things might happen within a year with like life situation. So making sure that you're going in and you're updating all that information. So this document is a longer document and there's multiple versions and options for you to download online. But what it does is it includes information in there for you to create like your checklists and forms. So a lot of you were talking about creating those checklists, making sure you're tracking things, tracking your documents, keeping all those important things together. So what this toolkit does is it gives you like different forms and how you can organize that information and how you can safeguard that information. So I will definitely make sure that you get this because it just gives you kind of like a guideline. So even if you don't fully use it, because it's like fully use it because it's a bigger document, you can get ideas from it as you're organizing all your information. All right, so we're at the end, folks. You all did so great. Thanks for participating. So when it comes to like financial emergency, what are some of the takeaways that I would love for you to get from this is trying your best to organize and organize as best as you can. We all have different passions and areas when it comes to, putting things together, but making sure that you're organized as best you can, looking to see what your needs are, your current situation. What's your household situation right now in terms of money you have coming in and that money that you have going out, knowing what tools you can use, thinking about different ways that you can protect yourself from risks, and insurance is an important part of that, and the type of insurance that you might have based on your location, based on your needs, looking to see what your insurance coverage looks like. Making sure you're communicating with other people in your life. So whatever your household type, just having those conversations about an emergency situation. What do we do when things happen? Using different secured storage method and watching out for scams, because those things do emerge during financial emergency situations. And also, again, like a big important part, which I'm sure a lot of you already have like such a good handle on, is that documentation does matter. And that EFAC form should be able to help with like getting organized and getting everything together. Now, I don't see any questions. That was a lot of information that I covered in 50 minutes. Yay, I'm so proud of myself. 50 minutes, folks. I'm going to hand it back to Emily right now. Thank you all so much for being on. And if you have any questions afterwards, please stay on and we'll talk.
Oh, Camaya, nicely done. Thank you so much for all that good information. I was adding things to my list of ways I need to prepare for potential disaster. So thank you.
Yes.
Camaya does have a short survey. I'm going to share the link right now in the chat box. If you have a few minutes, we would kindly ask you to fill that out. Those the results from the surveys help us improve the program for future audiences, as well as help us know what was of value to you all. So there's the link right there. That does conclude today's presentation and our disaster preparedness series. We want to thank all of you for attending these series. We appreciate the feedback that you've provided again through this survey for Camaya, and then the past webinar events that you've provided your feedback for. We thank you for that. A reminder, we will be sending out a follow-up email in the next couple of weeks with links to all of the recorded sessions, the handouts that are provided, and then session surveys, just in case you missed some of those past surveys. If you had a few minutes to take those, we would appreciate it. We will also be sharing the disaster preparedness content to our Around the Table Facebook page. I will go ahead and share a link to that Facebook page if you are on social media there. Please check it out. September is National Preparedness Month, and so during the month I'll be sharing some resources through that website. And then also go ahead and feel free to share that Facebook page. We would love to have you invite friends or family or neighbors to the Facebook page and engage with us in that way. So with that, if you need to hop off, we thank you for joining us. Otherwise, if you have questions, go ahead and remain on the line, enter those in the chat box, and we will have Camaya respond to those. So thank you all.
Thank you, Emily. I don't see any questions, but I did see a comment from earlier that Dawn shared about the anniversary of Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a very hard time and many years of recovery for a lot of folks. Thanks for sharing that.
Okay, I do not see any questions coming through. If you think of something later, please feel free to reach out to Camaya or anyone at University of Illinois Extension. We are here to help. Thank you again for your time, and we will see you all later.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.